deeper into what this case, what the judicial process, some personal diaries, what does that really mean for us? And for us, I mean the family, the himself, and some of our close-knit friends as well. In terms of it's being his birthday today, so it's quite sad for us that he's away from us, his family, he's away from his home, he's away from his books. In fact, just before this call started, I was trying to write a letter to him, and I actually didn't know what to write. So there was a happy birthday, and then I was like, okay, what next? So that's kind of how most of our letters go. I think it's essentially a struggle to write something on there, and so it's basically about our lives and just kind of keeping him occupied and up to date with what's happening. I'd also actually like to add that I got a call from his mom today, so which means my grandmom, and she was asking me why he hasn't called, and it's his birthday and stuff. And we kind of have to keep up with the lie that we've been telling her all this time, that, oh, he's stuck in some other country, no access to phones. Because of COVID, there are no flights flying right now, which is why he can't come meet her. He can't call her very often. Ever since, I think the mulaqats have started as well, he hasn't called at all. So it's been once in maybe 6 months or so. So, I mean, that's the only way we're kind of keeping her all right health-wise and making sure that the shock really does not affect her. So that's what his birthday actually looks like. So it's not very pleasant for us. Far from it, actually. Reflecting him on as a father, I think everyone spoke about what an intellectual he was outside, and by outside I mean outside the house. And it was the same. I think his personality never changed. He's an intellectual in the house as well. So I think for me and my sister, we're two siblings, it means that he was kind of the motivator that made us study, not only study, but just essentially made us follow our goals, made sure that we were very focused in whatever we did. It was, I think, in the house, if I recall, there was never a time when the lights ever went out, because he was always studying and writing. And if he wasn't studying and writing, we were. So that was kind of our household. It was just, I don't know, it was fun in that way, but it was just intellectual as well. So, and I think the other thing that we got from him was essentially challenging thoughts. And that could be something as small as challenging something that was learned in school, that was there in the textbooks, etc. And it was just about making logical sense of what's written, making sure that it's rationally correct, and kind of digesting that instead of just reading and kind of following the herd. I don't think he quite liked that. And that was pretty evident in what he wrote, what he spoke. So yeah, I think all of those values carried at home as well. So that's kind of the father he was. Going a bit more away from this, I wanted to talk about 3 points today. So one was the case, the second was the judicial process, and third is kind of personal diaries and kind of what we've gone through. On the way, I'd just like to caveat that I don't mean to offend anyone. It might come off a little bit strong, but I don't mean it that way. So in terms of, I think the first point is about the case. So this entire case, I mean, I don't want to repeat the history, but it basically rests on prima facie evidence. And to be honest, I quite hate that phrase now, because it essentially means that superficially, if someone thinks there's something fishy in an evidence or something that's brought up to them, then they have absolute rights to put someone in jail and take away their freedom. Thankfully for us, some people have gone above and beyond to analyze all of this evidence that is called prima facie evidence. And there have been a series of reports and analysis almost that has come out of it. So there was a first wave of arsenal reports that said that all of these letters based on which this case rests have been planted in Rona's computer. Then there was a second wave that said that this analysis reveals that the procedure in which it was done. The third wave was more reassuring how the procedure was done, where was it all done from, and some more details on it. And then there's a fourth analysis or report that actually states who did it. Just going back on this is, there were some, of course, people who said that this was a prima facie case. I mean, there's some evidence that says that these guys are culprits. and need to get into jail because they're of some threat to the country. At this point, we have more evidence to say that they're actually innocent. More evidence than the, I don't know, 7 volumes of 10,000 pages that the police have filed. But you guys were talking about logic and rationale, and all of that gets beaten in this because the person or the people who said that there is prima facie case should actually say that, oh, there is prima facie evidence that these guys are innocent. But this is, of course, not the way the case works, and this is not the way our judicial process works. I think what I want to say is that there is absolutely zero accountability in what happens to these people. So yes, very well, Stan Swamy passed away. It's been 1 year since he passed away. And he, despite all this evidence being there, despite it being there that there is no case, these guys are innocent, everything was planted by the establishment, all of this being in place, it didn't help. And it still doesn't help. I mean, there has been a committee, etc., that's formed to actually fight for his rights now that he's dead. So you can only imagine what kind of accountability that's there. And there's nothing, I don't think it's a new point that I'm raising. The second bit of this that I want to go through is the judicial process. Growing up in school, etc., we're taught how history and civics works, and how good our judicial process is, how good its independence is, what it means to be a lawyer, judge. Thought those were really tough professions to actually crack into. And here, I think I'd like to caveat that I'm not hating on that profession or anything. I think I'm just kind of getting a story out of it. Essentially, now that we have this prima facie evidence, which, by the way, is the story that's weaved around BK is quite weak, and it's almost funny. If it was actually a joke, if someone would laugh about it. I can't. But it's almost like a 12-year-old kid has written. So the issue here is for that. So I think the good part of this is that, okay, we have all this evidence on our side, which actually beats all of the evidence that the other guys have, and that's all the witnesses, all the papers, etc., that they filed. Now, in this judicial process that we see is we have been waiting for bail hearings, judges recusing themselves over and over again, new judges being appointed, and so on. Actually, on the point of judges recusing themselves, I'm pretty sure by now, this case has probably made a country record for the number of judges that have recused themselves from hearing this case. So that's close to, I think, 5 or 6. And there's often no reason or rationale given to why they are recusing themselves. I think all they have to say is, we cannot hear this case, we recuse ourselves. That's it. That's the only statement that they have to make. And time and again, I think I get to hear, "Arey courts to aise hi chalte," which essentially means this is how it works. That's one point. Now, going beyond that, so in addition to all of these judges recusing themselves, bail hearings, etc., which actually come more than like maybe once in 2 months or once in a month sometimes, we also have holidays. Well, it's very important for these judges and lawyers and the courts, etc., to take holidays like winter breaks and summer breaks and Diwali vacations, etc. And what that really means is that for all these days that they are staying off and that they are not functioning, they're actually taking away someone's freedom each minute, each hour. So they're leaving someone being an under trial, rotting away in the prison piece by piece. That essentially is what it means. So 2 things here kind of add up to what actually goes on in our heads when we have to go for a bail hearing, or we have to go to the courts, or we have to get a text from the lawyer that, oh, this bail hearing has been moved for no reason, for nothing, holiday, someone got sick or something like that. And that's essentially how this has worked. Yeah. After all this kind of process, it's essentially been 2.5 years for my father and close to 4 to 5 years for some of the others. And the bail hearings are still under process, which means they've not been completed. Case has not begun. And this could be the way it goes. It can be for eternity, that it can just keep going on and on. So now, essentially, the reason of all of these frustrations is that of course, there's that whole point about there is no accountability. Who is accountable for the time lost? Who is making sure that if they were to get out, what happens then? So who's going to take the blame? And I'm pretty sure, because there are so many people involved, that there will be no one person that will take the blame of it, let alone anyone taking the blame of it. There is no accountability, there is no compensation, there is no end to this. Like, what is broken will always remain broken for the rest of the time that these guys are alive. The third point I want to go over is people's outlook on things. And I want to speak about that here because there is a large audience, and I feel like this message needs to reach a large audience. So I called this point personal diaries a bit earlier because this is something that we've witnessed firsthand, and just want to get it out there of what people's mentalities are. And of course, this does not apply to everyone on the call. I don't know, but it does apply to the people that we have come across. So in the past 3.5, 4 years, that's essentially since when the first FIR was lodged and then the raids, etc. happened. Yeah. So we have survived with people around us, excluding some close-knit family friends, people around us with zero empathy. So this means that in various ways, we have gotten kind of insults, we've gotten some social media slurs, some abuses, people reacting badly to deaths of family members and whatnot. So I think the broader point here is the zero empathy comes from actual lack of understanding and brain power to evaluate situations. So I would like to give 2 examples here. My mother, who is also quite old because she's close to 70 now, she's quite old. She's in Mumbai, so she's on the receiving end of all of these kind of situations that come in very close quarters with, people who we interact with fairly. She was actually asked point blank, oh, why did Anand Teltumbde choose to surrender on 14th April? Was it to make a scene out of it? And was it because it was Ambedkar Jayanti and that was a hard-hitting statement for that day? And this is quite insulting because this was not some kind of a show. An arrest is not a show. It's actually very, very serious. And in case anyone wants an explanation of this, this was actually the last day that they could surrender, and so it was that day. No one chooses to die before they need to absolutely die. So that's literally the explanation. But there are people out there that actually believe this, and they spread about it like that. And what it really means in very tangible terms is that they don't believe this case. They actually think that there is something wrong that these people have done. Or they believe that, oh, these people spoke about the government. They wanted to kind of, write very, very explicitly and debate explicitly. And so this was going to come to them. And so it's happened and it's fair. So that's kind of the reactions we get. The second example is very early on, she was told by a close kin to not express herself through, my mom this is, to not express herself through actions or words because she's an Ambedkar at the end of the day. And this is a Maoist linked case. And so all she should do is basically not speak and carry some respect of the Ambedkar name. So I'm sure if Ambedkar was listening to this somewhere, he'd be turning in his grave. But this is essentially what she was told. And all of these things are not only insulting, I think, I don't have words for that. But, and over the course of whatever these 3.5, 4 years, what has happened is, of course, we've lost contact with a lot of friends, families, etc. They've stopped communicating with us, and so be it actually. But in a sense, I think what they're scared of is that by talking to us, they are painting a target on themselves. So they somewhere, by having that thought in their minds, I feel like they do believe that there is something wrong that these people have done. And that, they kind of, maybe not fully, but they kind of saw it coming for themselves. So that's kind of the impression we get out of it. So I think in just closing, I'd like to say that, so beyond just the regular battles of the court, looking after dad remotely, making sure he's okay, making sure we make it to the court hearings, etc., make food whenever we get to see him, etc. There's a whole larger thing on the background which indicates a lot of what the society's mentality is right now. So for one is that the people who follow Ambedkar or who have claimed to follow Ambedkar's thoughts and writings, etc., do land up in the list of the people whose examples are given. So, and they are also unempathetic. And so one is empathy in terms of understanding what that person is going through, what to say, what not to say. And then the second is just that if it's not their skin, then it doesn't matter to them. They are not going to stand and fight. So I think the last point is we see, I know Kavita in the start, you had mentioned a bunch of names, Tista, etc. They're all in prison. And these are some renowned people that are going into prison. But I just want to point out that this is just the beginning where they are starting to kind of really crack down on individuals, intellectuals. But it's going to go beyond that. It's going to go to an ordinary person who's doing their job, who is, I don't know, working 9 to 5, but probably tweeted something wrong, sent someone some message, and it offended someone somewhere. And all of these tools that the establishment right now has of planting things, like applying some really draconian laws on you, or any other small things, or it could be harassment even. But the establishment is getting the confidence kind of to do it over and over again. Yeah, and so I think if the people don't speak up to this right now, I mean, they're just kind of being okay with how the India is changing and how it's becoming. So yeah, I'd like to end with that. Thanks a lot for letting me have this kind of space to speak.